Terrifying secrets of prehistoric survival. What 1.8 million years ago revealed about us. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the quiet neighborhood of Millburn, New Jersey. Sarah stared at the unmarked van across the street, the engine hum piercing the stillness like a knife. Every instinct in her screamed danger. She had heard the rumors, the tales of missing pets, the whispers of strange happenings in the woods. But this was no fairy tale, it was real. Tension hung thick in the air, oppressive and suffocating. As she turned to her modest two-bedroom house, a cold chill gripped her heart. She had just come home from another grueling night shift at the hospital, leaving her 5-year-old son, Ethan, alone with nothing but his dreams. What if she had failed him? This nagging thought danced at the edges of her mind, amplifying her fears. The scratches on the old tree behind Mr. Hargrove's yard flashed before her eyes. Deep, jagged lines, ominous like claw marks, whispered secrets of something primal lurking in the dark. Thoughts spun wildly as Sarah tried to convince herself she was being irrational. Yet, the next day, Ethan casually mentioned Mr. Hargrove had visited him while she was gone. Her heart raced. How often did he stop by? Was it innocent or something more sinister? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As twilight settled over the suburb, Sarah retreated to her living room. Silence crept around her like a predator stalking its prey. She could hear Ethan's soft breathing from his room, a stark contrast to the thundering in her chest. Delving into local folklore, she discovered a chilling history, stories of an ancient cult believed to have once thrived in the area. Sacrifices made to appease dark forces, rituals etched into the fabric of the land. Sweat trickled down her spine. The symbols she'd seen on that tree, were they a part of this gruesome legacy? The lights flickered, sending shadows slithering across the walls. Her phone buzzed violently. Neighbors texting frantically about disappearances, their messages a chorus of panic. Little did they know, something sinister simmered beneath the calm surface of their sleepy town. She wanted to dismiss her anxiety, to brush it off as paranoia. But the knot of dread twisted tighter within her as she stared out the window and saw the van it was back. A knot of fear coiled in her stomach, heavy and unrelenting. She couldn't ignore it any longer. She had to confront Mr. Hargrove, to demand answers. Before she could gather her courage, she noticed movement behind the van. Her heart pounded as shadows shifted inside, cloaked figures whispering secrets that beckoned. This felt like a nightmare, an ancient struggle encapsulated in her seemingly sheltered suburb. Just as she reached for the doorknob, a cold wind brushed against her neck, and the familiar hum of the van's engine surged louder, drowning out her breaths. Time stood still, as dread wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. She crossed the threshold into the unknown, and in that moment, she understood this nightmare had just begun. Would she uncover the remnants of a terrifying past, or become yet another bewildered soul lost to Millburn's dark secrets? The door creaked as Sarah stepped outside, the chill of night wrapping around her like a heavy cloak. The shadows danced, twisting and contorting under the flickering streetlight, each movement bringing forth a wave of unease. The van loomed like a predator in the stale air, waiting, watching, hungrily. "Mr. Hargrove," she called out, forcing her voice to carry over the engine's persistent hum. No response, just the eerie silence that seemed to swallow every sound. Her heart raced as she took a cautious step toward the van. Its windows darkened, hiding whatever lay within. As she moved closer, her eyes caught movement in the trees. The branches swayed unnaturally, cleaving through the twilight like skeletal fingers beckoning her back. Panic lanced through her veins. This felt wrong, deeply, insidiously wrong. She glanced back at her house, so small and vulnerable against the oppressive dark, before edging closer to the van once more. Suddenly, the door swung open with a jarring creak. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as a figure emerged, cloaked in shadow, features hidden beneath a hood. The air thickened with tension, She could smell damp earth and something rotten, a scent that clung to her skin and weighed down her soul. "Are you looking for someone?" The figure rasped, voice low and gravelly. "It wasn't he, Mr. Hargrove." "Where is he?" she demanded, grounding herself against the fear that threatened to take her. She tried to appear fierce. Her skin prickled with cold sweat. For all her bravado, she could feel the ground shifting precariously beneath her. The figure leaned closer, and a chill passed through Sarah as a glint of silver caught her eye, an emblem hanging from the stranger's neck. It wasn't he, just a piece of jewelry. It looked like the symbol she had seen carved into the tree. The connection snapped her focus back to reality. The dark web of the town's history was pulling her in deeper. "He serves a purpose, just as we all do," the figure whispered, shuffling closer. "Everything has its place in the cycle. You're tied to it just like him." A swell of nausea arose as she stumbled back. "What have you done to my son?" Fear ignited her muscles, turning her limbs heavy. All she wanted was to turn and run, to escape the shadows that loomed ever closer. "You're too late," the figure cackled, and the sound chilled her to the core. "The night is our ally now." At that moment, an echoing thud resonated from the depths of the van, jolting Sarah to the edge of her resolve. She turned and ran, darting back toward her home, the night itself clawing at her heels. Each hurried step drummed an urgent rhythm. She burst through her front door, slamming it shut with a force that rattled the house. Desperation clawed at her throat as she peered through the window, breathless. The van still sat there, empty but decidedly sinister. The figure had vanished, but the palpable dread remained, thick and oppressive. The lights flickered again, and this time, they went out entirely, cloaking the room in darkness. Heart racing, she staggered back. Where was Ethan? A distant giggle echoed from his room, sweet but wrong, and it sent ice through her veins. A familiar voice pierced the silence, low and mocking. "Mommy, I'm playing." But she wasn't sure it was him anymore. The whisper of wind slithered through the cracks, carrying a promise of unsettling revelations. What was happening in her house? What lurked beneath her child's laughter? Sarah had never felt so utterly alone, yet shadows festered at the edges of her thoughts as she took a trembling step toward Ethan's door. Reality twisted with a jarring question. Who had she really lost in the depths of Milburn's secrets? The air felt heavy as Sarah hesitated at Ethan's door, the laughter lingering like a ghost in the silence. Each heartbeat echoed in her ears, a countdown to something unimaginable. "Ethan?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The giggle stopped abruptly. "Mommy?" The voice was sweet, but it clawed at her sanity. It was his voice, yet wrong. "Come play with me." Fear crawled up her spine, and she swallowed hard. With a deep breath, she pushed the door open, wincing at the creaking hinges. The darkened room loomed before her, shadows pooling in every corner, swallowing the faint light from the hallway behind her. She squinted, searching for her son. The dimness felt alive, like a thick, pulsating heart lurking in the corners. "Ethan, where are you?" She stepped in cautiously, feeling an icy draft brush against her skin. "Right here, Mommy." The joyous trill sprang from beneath the bed, laced with something unsettling. She knelt down, afraid of what she might find, her heart pounding against her chest like a caged animal. "Ethan," she peered into the darkness beneath the bed. His small figure was curled up, eyes sparkling with an unnatural light. "Why do you look scared?" "I'm having so much fun." The boy reached out, his fingers inviting. But there was something different in his eyes. They shimmered with a dull glint, void of innocence. A shiver ran down her spine. "Come here, sweetheart," she urged, forcing warmth into her voice. "Let us go check on Dad." "No, I'm not done playing." His tone shifted, deeper and more menacing, sending a throb of terror into her gut. Ethan panic clawed her throat as she felt the weight of the room shift, shadows pressing closer. "What are you and the other ones?" "Come and see." He laughed again, a sound that twisted and turned, echoing around the room like a fading echo. The walls pulsated as if pressing in around her. Each breath became harder to take, and she could feel the darkness swirling, eager to envelop her. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to run, yet something held her still, like invisible strings wrapping around her limbs. "Not yet, Mommy," Ethan sang, his voice trailing off into a low hum. "No." She yanked herself away, heart racing, stumbling back toward the door. But as she turned, she found the doorway shrouded in an impenetrable black. It was gone. Panic flared, igniting her every sense. Where was the hallway? She banged her fists against the wall in desperation, but it felt fluid, like pounding into water. "Mommy!" The voice echoed, now joined by a chorus of giggles. Shadows emerged from the corners, twisting into shapes, figures of children faces she couldn't fully see, but felt somehow familiar. "Join us," they chorused, voice blending into a symphony of laughter that rang with malevolence. "No, I want Ethan," she cried, tears welling. "Ethan!" The figures danced closer, their movements erratic, arms outstretched, inviting her into their horrific play. "You can't have him. He is mine. Just let go, Mommy," Ethan called, and his eyes flashed red for a brief moment. "You'll find him in the darkness." The atmosphere crushed down, shadows swirling, and with every blink, everything twisted. Walls closed in, laughter echoed, and Sarah felt herself being pulled toward the chaos. All at once, she heard the sound of a door creaking open somewhere, the distant rumble of thunder and shifting shapes. Relief washed over her momentarily, but the children laughed louder, drowning out her hope. In one last surge of instinct, she launched herself into the dark, searching for an escape that might lead her back to the real Ethan. But the shadows laughed. Somewhere deep within Milburn's secrets, she knew the truth lay in the shadows. In that moment, she realized the dread that lingered was just the beginning of something far darker. The whispers of the past were calling to her, echoing in the depth of the abyss that now surrounded her. Wrapping her in terror, what had she really opened up, and how far would it drag her into its icy grip? Darkness swirled around Sarah, wrapping tightly like a shroud. Each breath she took felt strained, as if the air was being sucked from her lungs. Giggling voices echoed in her mind, mingled with thoughts of Ethan, her precious boy lost in the chaos. Instinct screamed for her to fight, to escape this nightmare. "Mommy, where are you?" Ethan's voice, now soft and distant, tugged at her heart. It sounded so innocent, but she knew better. "Ethan, I'm coming," she screamed into the void, her voice swallowed by the shadows. Panic clawed at her throat as she stumbled forward into the swirling darkness. The walls around her pulsed, alive with evil intent. Suddenly, the room shifted, and she found herself in a long hallway, dimly lit by a flickering bulb. The laughter faded, replaced by an unsettling silence that rang hollow in the air. She dashed forward, gripping the wall for guidance, terrified of what might be lurking just beyond her sight. "Ethan," she called again, desperation clawing her insides. "Where are you? I need you." A door loomed at the end of the hallway. It stood slightly ajar, a crack of darkness inviting her inside, and Sarah had to fight the urge to turn back. But then was that a movement? She stepped closer, peering into the void. "Mommy, please." His voice broke through the silence, a plea laced with something darker than mere fear. A chill settled deep in her bones. She reached for the doorknob, but hesitated. What lay beyond that door? Could it be the source of the laughter, the dark place she sensed earlier? There was no going back now. She shoved the door open, and it creaked like the voice of the damned. Inside was an old, cluttered room, toys scattered, each one silently watching her with hollow eyes. "Ethan?" she whispered, feeling dread settle heavily on her chest. At first, nothing. Then, a flicker of movement caught her eye. Something darted from the shadows behind the dresser. She squinted, heart pounding. "Ethan, is that you?" Something emerged, not her son but a small, pale figure with dirt-smudged cheeks and hollow eyes. "Come play with us," it murmured, voice sweet yet sharp like a blade. "No, I just want to find my son." The figure tilted its head, a smile creeping across its face. "He is playing a special game." In the dark, a sudden rush of cold coursed through the room. Shadows danced through the corners, twisting into forms reminiscent of children that didn't look quite right. They were smiling, but there was nothing kind in their grins. "Join us," they sang, their eyes shimmering with a wretched light. Sarah stumbled backward, searching for an escape. "Leave me alone," she yelled, the horror mounting. Just then, she spotted a small figure in the center of the room, more distinct, crouching beneath a blanket. "Ethan." She lunged toward it, but as she reached out, the scene morphing into chaos. The figures around her laughed, their voices merging into a cacophony that pounded against her ears. The small figure unfurled, revealing familiar features twisted into something grotesque. "Mommy," he called, but it wasn't his voice anymore. "It's time for you to play with us." The truth crashed into her. She was the plaything, trapped within this sinister game, and the door was closing again, shadows looming ever closer. "Ethan, I'm coming," she screamed, heart racing as she lunged toward the door only to find it solid like stone. "Playtime is forever in the darkness," echoed all around her, drowning out her panic. With no way out and the walls pressing in, Sarah could feel her sanity fraying. What sinister fate awaited her now? The shadows were tightening their grip. Would she ever escape from this cursed place? Or was she doomed to join the laughter forever? The laughter echoed back, chilling her to the bone. "You were warned, now join us." And then it hit her, a sudden, chilling thought. In the dark, perhaps she'd find Ethan after all. But at what cost? She felt the walls pulse, closing in as the laughter began to drown her cries. What glimmer of hope remained, buried somewhere in the abyss? The shadows blurred around Sarah, coiling like serpents, squeezing the air from her lungs. Her heart hammered against her chest, each beat echoing in the suffocating silence. Panic threatened to swallow her whole as the taunting giggles faded into whispered promises of madness. "Join us, join the game," the voices hissed, echoing from unseen corners, their malicious delight palpable. Each syllable dripped with an unsettling familiarity, swirling around her like a storm. "Ethan," she cried, forcing the name from her raw throat, desperation fusing her voice with a frantic urgency. "I must find you." The room twisted again, the walls contorting in ominous vibrations that thrummed along her skin. She turned, her gaze darting back to the little figure that mocked her from the shadows. It stood there, that pale child with dirt-streaked skin, its wide eyes locking onto her with an intensity that was both captivating and horrifying. "Mommy," it whispered, voice laced with an eerie sweetness. "It's your turn to play." "No, you're not my boy," she screamed, clutching her head, trying to dispel the overwhelming dread. But even as she shouted, uncertainty took root in her mind. Was this real? Was Ethan really lost? Or had she lost him long ago? The faded toys surrounding her began to shift, animated by unseen forces. They spoke in shrill, plastic tones, urging her to stay, to join their cursed gathering. Sarah backed away, her eyes dancing nervously from one shadow to another. The room was now filled with spectral laughter, mocking and cruel, rising like a tide of despair. Then, piercing through the cacophony, came a voice so raw, so desperate. It was like a familiar thread stitching together her frayed sanity. "Mommy, I'm here." Her heart leapt at the sound, but something was wrong. He sounded distorted, like an echo from a warped mirror. She spun around, desperate to locate the source, feeling the darkness close in around her. "Ethan," she pleaded, searching the corners of the room, her voice quaking. If this was a trick, a cruel game, she refused to be a pawn. "Come play," came the insistent call again, now swirling with chilling joy. "We can all be together." The cold claws of dread wrapped tighter around her heart. She could see them now, the grotesque figures emerging from the shadows, smiling wide, their faces contorted into nightmarish grins. Each one beckoned her closer, inviting her into a realm where reality twisted, where the line between love and horror blurred until nothing was left but hunger for despair. "No," she protested, clawing at the edge of her sanity. "Leave me alone." But her voice was lost, barely a whisper against the tidal wave of others. She felt the walls pulse again, and for the briefest moment, everything fell silent. Hope flickered, a flame dim but persistent. Maybe she could turn the game against them. "You want me to play? Fine," she shouted, surprising even herself with the sudden swell of defiance. "But you have to show me Ethan first." The room fell still, the laughter silenced, the watcher children staring at her with wide, haunting eyes. For a moment, the shadows held their breath, and Sarah felt a surge of determination wash through her. "Show him to me," she commanded, gripping the fading light of hope fiercely, trying to mask the tremor of fear in her voice. As if responding to her call, the shadows quivered, and a soft thrum filled the air like the distant beating of drums. Very well, they hissed as the darkness parted, revealing a shadowy hallway beyond. Sarah's heart raced. Was this her path to Ethan? Or a deeper descent into madness? In the murky distance, a small figure stood, barely illuminated, a flicker of hope or a cruel illusion. What awaits her in the dark? Is it salvation or the final trap? The hallway loomed before Sarah, an endless stretch of darkness punctuated by warped shadows. The walls seemed to breathe, drawing her closer with phantom urges that tangled with her trepidation. Every instinct screamed for her to run, but Ethan's voice resonated in her head, desperate, unyielding. "Mommy!" The call echoed through the corridor, a promise and a plea interwoven. She dashed forward, her feet pounding against the cold, hard ground. Each step sent tremors of dread into her core, but the pull of motherhood eclipsed her fear. She had to find him. She had to rescue her child. The shadows flickered, whispering secrets that curled around her thoughts like smoke. "Join us," they cooed, the tone now dripping with sickly sweetness. Each syllable felt like a knife, slicing through the fragile veil of hope. But the voice, the promise of Ethan, sparked a burst of defiance, burning brightly amidst the encroaching darkness. "Show me where he is," Sarah shouted, her voice steadier than she felt. The shadows hesitated, momentarily turning their sinister attention back to her. The quiet became heavy, pressing against her ears. In that moment of stillness, the pleadings of the children surrounding her fell silent. The air thickened, crackling with expectation. Sarah swallowed hard, willing the shadows to reveal the truth she had been summoned to uncover. "Follow," a voice whispered, its tone edged with a curious malice. The darkness pulsed, then shifted, guiding her deeper into the heart of the unknown. Each step dragged her closer into a world where light struggled to exist. The walls began to drip with an inky substance, reminiscent of tears. They wept for the lost souls trapped in this hellish realm. She hesitated, panic swelling like a tidal wave, threatening to drown her in despair. "No, Ethan needs me. I can't stop." She pressed on, the flickering figure still beckoning her from the far reaches of the eerie corridor. But as she drew nearer, the shadows began to warp around her again. Writhing like tendrils reaching for her, a cacophony of laughter erupted, rising from the depths of the darkened hall. "What fun we will have!" The voices echoed, twisted and mirthful, like a chorus of maddened spirits. A sense of urgency forced her feet to move, pushing her into a precarious sprint, fueled only by her determination. Suddenly, as she turned a corner, she found herself in a vast, dimly lit chamber, filled with grotesque figures, children, but not children. Their faces were sunken, eyes hollow, yet filled with a kind of haunting glee. They swayed, dancing to a rhythm only they could hear, beckoning her to join their haunting game. "Dance with us, Mommy," they chanted, the words flowing like a wicked melody that chilled her to the bone. But there, in the murky shadows at the chamber's edge, stood a small figure, disheveled and trembling. "Ethan!" she cried, her heart clawing up her throat. Every instinct told her to run, to reach for her son, yet a suffocating weight pinned her down, the words of the shadows echoing in her mind. "Join us or lose him forever." The choice hung in the air, thick like the smoke that swirled around her. Could she save him without succumbing to the very darkness that sought to swallow them both? The shimmering hope of a mother's love stood against the dark promise of despair. Clenching her fists, she moved forward, inching closer to Ethan. But with every step, the shadows writhed and twisted, daring her to abandon her escape. "He can't be saved if you don't play," they hissed. Just as she thought she could touch him, a deafening silence fell. The figures stopped their eerie dance. All eyes turned to her, their gazes hungry, their smiles wicked. "What will you sacrifice?" they sang in unison, their voices a chilling reminder of the cost of love in this nightmarish game. As the shadows closed in, Sarah was faced with a choice: her son or her soul. "Which will it be, Mommy?" The scene froze, everything hanging in the balance. The answer was urgent, terrifying, just beyond her reach. Did she dare play their game? What awaited in the blackened corners of that chamber? Or was her attempt to save Ethan mortally doomed? The shadows waited, hungry for her decision. Time stretched, twisting like the shadows around her. Sarah locked eyes with Ethan, and her heart hammered in her chest. He looked so fragile, so small, surrounded by those wretched children, their bodies jerking in rhythm, their empty eyes shimmering with some dark understanding she could only fear. "What will you give?" The words slithered through the air, dripping with malevolence. The shadows closed in, curling around her legs, dragging her closer to the dance floor of lost souls. Their laughter crescendoed, twisting like a knife through her resolve. "Ethan," she gasped, struggling against the oppressive weight of the shadows. "I'm coming for you." But with each attempt, the space between them felt impossibly vast, marred by the twisted silhouettes that leered and laughed. "Mommy, please." Ethan's voice sliced through the chaos, raw with panic. For a brief moment, hope flickered. He was still there, still calling to her. But the shadows noticed, their chorus shifting into a menacing hum. "Play with us, Mommy, and he'll be yours forever." Visions flooded her mind. Ethan's smile, his laughter, the way he would run to her with open arms. She would do anything, anything to keep that light alive. But what price would they demand? Yet she hesitated. Fear clutched at her throat, tightening with every breath. "Just one little dance," a disembodied voice taunted, dripping with mockery. Sarah stumbled back, fighting the urge to turn and flee. She had to save him, she had to stand her ground. Enough. She stood tall, grounding herself in the fiery core of her will. "You want to take him from me? I'll fight you." Her voice trembled, but she shouted louder, piercing through the sinister laughter that echoed in the chamber. The shadows recoiled slightly, stung by her defiance. Yet, in that pause, the children twisted their faces into grotesque masks of laughter. "Fight!" They descended closer, their forms blending into a swirling abyss. What a delightful game! Suddenly, the shadows solidified, a massive mass of darkness shifting toward her. Sarah felt her breath hitch, her heart a drumbeat of terror. "Ethan!" she screamed, reaching forward, willing the bond of love to leap across the abyss. Just then, Ethan smiled, that same innocent smile that always chased her fears away. "Mommy, just dance, please." His voice emerged, tender and pure, battling the wicked cackles that surrounded them. The room vibrated, an electric tension filling the air. Shadows churned chaotically, scrambling for control as she fought against the urge to succumb. The room began to swirl, light penetrated the darkness in thin, jagged lines, illuminating the twisted figures. They shrieked in outrage, angry at the light's bravery. "Dance with us," they shrieked, the sound pinching against her ears. But Sarah looked back at Ethan, his figure radiating a soft glow, and intuition surged through her. "Okay, I'll play," she shouted, surrendering the battle while keeping her eyes on her son. But deep in her heart, she knew she would turn their game against them. They wanted a sacrifice, but sacrifice what? Ethan's playful face flickered again as the shadows encroached upon them, pulling her deeper into their dreadful game. The laughter melded into a sinister crescendo, vibrating through the chamber and shaking her bones. "What will it be, Mommy?" they sang, their voices oozing with anticipation. "What will you offer?" Sarah's pulse raced, and answer loomed at the fringes of her terror. From the depths of her unease, something broke free. "I'll offer myself," she screamed. "But I'll take him with me." The room froze, a collective gasp echoing in the chamber. Shadows shrank back, tantrums erupting among the figures. The weight shifted. It was her turn to take the power. She reached for Ethan. The shadows screamed, claws scraping against her skin, their venom piercing through her defenses. "You'll never escape. You must choose." Right then, the chamber began to shake, walls buckling as if the darkness, too, feared her resolve. With a final scream, Sarah lunged forward, desperate to grasp her child. But the ground beneath them began to crack, fissures opening as darkness surged, threatening to swallow them whole. "What if you lose everything?" The question crackled in the air as she felt the ground slip away. Only then did she glance back, clutching Ethan's hand firmly. The chorus grew quieter but more insistent, the shadows now pulling at her, begging for her to let go. And in that moment, suspended between despair and hope, the truth struck her. Was she still the one in control? Now, the shadows whispered of an ancient power lurking in the corners of the chamber, ready to be unleashed. Would they claim her soul as their prize, or could she unlock its mystery to break free? "Join us," they hissed, tempting her with visions of untold horrors. The chamber quaked, trepidation twisting through the air, as an unimaginable decision loomed before her. What would she do next? A heartbeat felt like eternity. Every choice felt fatal. The ground shook violently, and Sarah's heart raced, echoing in her ears as she struggled to maintain her grip on Ethan's small hand. The shadows, thick and roiling, clamored around them, their whispers more insistent, promising release from anguish, liberation from pain. "You'll never have him if you don't surrender," they taunted, their voices dripping with venomous glee. Desperation clawed at her mind. Each heartbeat seemed to sync with the cacophony of laughter and cries of the dancing children, their grotesque figures swirling like a terrible storm. She squeezed Ethan's hand tighter, resolute. "We can't let them take you, buddy. We fight this together." The darkness around them flickered, shadows writhing in response to her words. For a moment, they hesitated, and in that pause, hope ignited in Sarah's chest. She could feel that flicker of light within her. The fierce bond with her son imbued her with a strength she had forgotten she possessed. "They want you terrified," her thoughts raced. Fear feeds them. The wall around her crumbled in parts, revealing outlines of what lay beyond: other mothers, lost children, souls tethered in torment. But not her. No, she wouldn't join them. "Mommy, we need to go? Please." Ethan's voice penetrated the chaos like a lighthouse beam cutting through fog. She nodded, willing her inner strength to rise. "Hold on tight," she yelled, a surge of determination washing over her. She pulled Ethan close and dashed forward, a frantic escape from the grasping darkness. The shadows wailed, swirling like angry spirits. "You can't escape. You belong to us." The ceiling above them groaned as if it were alive, bricks shaking free, and chunks of stone tumbling toward them. Sarah ducked instinctively, shielding her son as dust clouds enveloped them. Their breath came in ragged gasps, hearts racing as they charged toward an ill-defined horizon that lay behind the malevolent shadows. Then, the flickering light surged again, illuminating a doorway, a sliver of reality inviting them home. She could feel the tendrils of darkness wrapping tightly around her ankles, but she pushed onward with every ounce of will. "We're getting out of here," she cried, pulling Ethan just behind her as they neared the doorway. The shadows split apart, bearing a path, but revealing the enormity of the darkness. It seeped into the cracks of the chamber, swirling with malicious intent, trying to reclaim what felt lost. "Mommy!" Ethan shouted desperately, tugging at her arm. "I don't want to go back." "No," she roared back, steeling herself. "We will not be part of their story." But one flickering shadow darted closer, whispering promises of safety and freedom luring them in. "Join us, little boy. You can stay forever and play. No pain, only fun." Ethan faltered, eyes wide with a mix of fear and longing. Sarah felt a cold rush of panic. "Ethan, listen to me. They're lying. They want to take you." She met his gaze and saw a glimmer of doubt, a hesitation breaking through. Tension mounted, shadows closing in, a cacophony of voices rising in a haunting chant. "Come, come." Join the dance with a fierce cry. Sarah thrust herself between the encroaching mass and Ethan. "We'll face this together. Always." It was a gamble, and she could feel the darkness clawing, hungry and ravenous. With one final push, she lunged toward the doorway, dragging Ethan along, their bodies colliding with the threshold. The moment they crossed, a blinding light erupted, engulfing them both, forcing the shadows to shriek and howl in agony. But just as the light surrounded them, illuminating the room until even the taint of darkness faded, a cold whisper curled in her ear. This isn't over yet. The world spun around them, tainted edges of shadow and blinding brightness mixing in a determined fight. And then they landed hard smack in the middle of an entirely different place. The air buzzed with uncertainty, and a horrid realization settled over her. This place wasn't the sanctuary she had hoped for. Letting go of Ethan's hand for just a moment, she looked around, terror pooling in her stomach. "What have we done?" she murmured, her breath hitching as a familiar giggle echoed, and she recognized the voices, hundreds of them coming from a shadowy corner, far too familiar. "Play with us." Ethan tugged at her sleeve, eyes wide with fear. "Mommy, we have to run." But when she looked back, the realization hit hard. Shadows loomed, still hungry, waiting patiently for a new game to begin. An uneasy truth gripped her heart. They merely traded one horror for another. What price would they demand next? Would they ever truly escape? The air around them pulsed with anticipation, the shadows looming higher, stretching like tendrils searching for prey. Sarah's heart raced, each thump echoing in the heavy silence that surrounded them, as Ethan clung to her leg, his small body trembling. It was an unsettling reminder of their new reality. The horrific giggles of unseen phantoms echoed around them. "Stay close," she hissed, tightening her grip around him. The sunken-eyed figures of children materialized from the shadows, their faces twisted into eerie, mirthless grins. They moved in disjointed ways, limbs askew, yet their eyes sparkled with a sickening joy that made Sarah's skin crawl. "Join us," they called, voices high and piercing. "We just want to play." "No, we can't," Ethan cried, his face turning pale. Their laughter morphed into a low hum, and Sarah felt the air thicken with despair. "They're not just playing," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "They want to take you away from me." With each step, the ground seemed to tremble beneath their feet, the shadows shifting in rhythm. For a moment, Sarah thought she could feel a pull, like an invisible string attempting to draw Ethan away, and with frenzied determination, she yanked him closer. "Run," she shouted, her voice echoing in the dark. They bolted, racing through an endless expanse of sorrowful faces and fluttering shadows. The once familiar landscape had twisted into a nightmarish maze, where every corner held a new terror. The children followed, dancing around them like lost souls centering on a macabre ritual, possessed by laughter that dripped with malice. "Where do we go?" Ethan cried, looking for a way out, his eyes wide with panic. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, desperation creeping into her voice. They had crossed through that light, but now they found themselves trapped in an insatiable void. The faint glow of what might be escape flickered like a dying ember, almost beyond reach. The children surrounded them, their voices layered like a thick fog. "Stay and play," they chanted, swinging their arms. "Leave behind the pain." "No," Sarah screamed, forcing her way through the crowd, pulling Ethan behind her. "We have to keep moving." But the darkness thickened, swirling with an energy of its own. Each step felt heavier, as if the very ground conspired against them. Shadows lunged, snagging at their clothes, their whispers becoming a maddening chant. "Join us. Forever, forever." Ethan stumbled, the grip of fear tightening around him like a noose. "Mommy," he cried, falling to the ground as a shadow slithered closer, its eyes gleaming with hunger. "Ethan." In that instant, Sarah felt a guttural wave of panic. She lunged forward, knowing there was no room for hesitation. The world blurred around her, shadows clawing at her legs, but she could only focus on her son. The weight of darkness pressed down like a fog, yet a flash of determination surged within her. "Get up. We have to fight." With every ounce of will, she yanked Ethan to his feet and sprinted into the swirling gloom. The laughter transformed into a harrowing screech. "You can't escape. You belong to us." Then, suddenly, a light punctured the blackness ahead. It throbbed invitingly, thrumming with a promise that echoed her own yearning for freedom. "There," she shouted, almost feeling the warmth on her skin. "Mommy, wait." Ethan's voice broke through her focus, and a new wave of shadows surged, determined to snatch him away. "No." She collided with the barrier of light, feeling it envelop them in a warm embrace. But the shadows clawed at the edges, desperate for entry. "Hold on." The light pulsed and flickered as she felt the tug of the darkness trying to pull them back. Did it fear the light, or did it crave them? It was impossible to say. All Sarah knew was the desperate drive to get away. With one last thrust, they plunged into the light. But as they did, something cold gripped her heart. The laughter morphed into something darker, more sinister. There's nowhere to hide, and just as they soared through, everything went black again. Sarah landed hard on a cold surface, breathless and disoriented. Distant echoes filled her ears, like whispers curling through vast open spaces. She turned to Ethan, but he was gone. "Ethan!" Panic shot through her. The malevolent shadow reformed around her, laughter rippling through like a living being. Now the game truly begins. What fate awaited them in this new realm of horrors? The shadows danced closer, their claws poised to strike as she searched desperately for Ethan. Would she ever find him again? Or would the shadows take him forever? The air settled heavy with a resignation Sarah had never felt before. She stood, heart racing as the once familiar whispers of the shadows now seemed to clamor with triumphant delight. Now the game truly begins, one taunting voice echoed, curling around her like smoke. It felt like a promise of doom, a culmination of all her worst fears. Ethan, she screamed, her voice raw with desperation. She darted through the thick fog, shadows swirling endlessly around her, twisting like ribbons of darkness reaching to drag her under. Panic clawed at her throat as she stumbled, searching for any sign of her boy, each rustle of leaves threatening to consume her. Images of his face surfaced in her mind, innocent laughter, bright eyes. She couldn't let this be the end. Straining to focus, she willed herself to stay calm. I will find you. I promise. She shouted into the void, her voice trembling but determined. Walls of shadow shuddered in response, and for a split second, a flicker of light glimmered in the distance, drawing her toward it. Trembling with a mix of hope and fear, she took a step toward the glow. As she moved closer, she saw him, a small figure in the distance, hunched and lost within a labyrinth of darkness. Ethan, Sarah cried. Her heart leapt, fueling her legs to sprint, her vision narrowing to just him. Mommy! His voice pierced through the air, ringing like a bell that shattered the silence. Help! Desperation surged as she closed the distance, lunging forward at breakneck speed. But as she neared, reality twisted violently. Shadows lunged, grasping at her, testing her resolve. No! She shouted, tears of fury spilling from her eyes. You want to take him? The shadows cackled, mocking her defiance. Join us. We can take you both. But something inside her flared. A flicker of light, a memory of courage ignited by love. You can't have him. I refuse to play your game. She yelled, her voice steadier than she felt. With newfound strength, she fought through the onslaught of shadows, her determination radiating against the consuming blackness. Ethan, hold on, she shouted, reaching out with every part of her soul, and as if the universe obeyed her call, he turned, eyes wide with relief. Mommy! His small hands reached out, and she felt their connection strong, pulling her through the layers of despair, tugged by hope. The moment their fingers brushed, an electric current raced through her, instinctive and primal. The shadows reeled, shrieking in fury as their hold weakened, allowing light to pierce through. No! Resist! The voices howled, a vortex of anguish swirling about them. Run! She shouted again, yanking him closer. Together, they charged through the last veil of darkness, tumbling into a radiant sphere of light. The shadows thrashed against it, shrieking, clawing at the brilliance like moths to a flame, desperate to consume them. And then, suddenly, everything fell away. Blinding sunlight wrapped around them like a second skin as they tumbled onto cool grass, filling their lungs with fresh air. Sarah gasped, reaching out to embrace Ethan, tears streaming down her cheeks into the soft fibers of his clothes. Ethan, you're safe. He was trembling, but he brightened at her voice. Mommy, I was so scared. Sarah held him tighter, feeling the warmth of reality as the echoes of darkness began to fade like a bad dream. I know, sweetheart. I'm here, she whispered, wrapping him in her arms, grounding them both. And as they took in the vibrant colors of the world around them, the bright blue sky, the gentle rustle of leaves, the cheerful call of birds, she felt a gentle breeze akin to a sigh of relief. But somewhere deep within, a last chilling whisper clung to her soul. It isn't over yet. Though the shadows had retreated into the recesses of her mind, their implications lingered. Sarah looked down at Ethan, his innocent smile igniting a light that pierced through her lingering fear. We beat them, Mommy, he exclaimed, his voice ringing with pure joy. Yes, she affirmed, pulling him close again, determination rising within her chest. But she recognized their victory had come at a cost. The specter of shadows would always lie beneath the surface, a reminder of what they had faced, a thread to tether them to a dark reality. With a tight squeeze, she whispered, We'll always fight together, Ethan. Forever. And as they walked home hand in hand, the shadows rippling at the edges of their serene landscape, Sarah made a silent vow to seek out the light together, no matter how dark the world occasionally turned. But first, they embraced the fading warmth of this moment, grateful for the bond that made them invincible against any darkness. You need to subscribe now to stay updated on Sarah and Ethan's story, and to see how they face new trials ahead. Smash that like button to help our community grow, and flood the comments with your thoughts and reactions. What do you think will happen next? Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this tale. Let us build these connections and face the future together.